I ultimately made my corrupt supervisor pay the price for her scheming. And it all started with a simple request for a Christmas holiday. I used to work in a disability shared accommodation agency. It's a specialized job where you support a small group of people with disabilities, typically 4 to 6, who live together in a shared home. The work is done in shifts. During the day, there are 2 staff members for every 4 clients, and at night, a single staff member stays for what's called a sleepover shift. The schedules, or rosters as we called them, were laid out in 4-week rotating blocks. I was on a contract for 0.75, which meant I worked 75% of full-time hours, totaling 57 hours every 2 weeks. The shift work was tough, but the pay was admittedly good. I was assigned to a house I'll call Sunup, which had 4 residents and a team of 7 workers. The management structure was simple. Each house had a supervisor who reported to a cluster manager. The cluster manager oversaw 6 houses and reported directly to the CEO. Company policy for leave requests was straightforward: first come, first served. If you wanted time off, you had to get your request in early. I'd been transferred to Sunup because of my specific qualifications after working at a larger, 6-client house. For the first year, things were fine. I got to know the residents, my fellow staff, and the house supervisor. However, there was an obvious clique of 4 staff members. It was a pattern you couldn't miss. Every school holiday, 3 of them would apply for leave, and the 4th would conveniently call in sick for the exact same period, complete with a medical certificate. They were clever, always rotating who was sick to try and hide the fact that they were all friends who partied together outside of work. About a year in, our house supervisor had to take long-term sick leave. One of the clique members, a woman we'll call Brenda, was appointed as the acting supervisor, and that's when everything went downhill. Almost immediately, she tried to cut my hours and give them to one of her friends. I had to point out the obvious: I was contracted for 57 hours a fortnight, and I would be paid for those hours whether I worked them or not. While I kept my hours, her friends were given all the best shifts and extra time, shamelessly favored by Brenda. That January, I put in a leave request for the March school holidays. Brenda rejected it, claiming that her clique had already submitted their leave for that time. I let it go, giving her the benefit of the doubt. Then, in March, I checked the leave calendar for the June school holidays. Each house had one so everyone could see who had scheduled time off. It was completely empty. I submitted my request again, only for it to be rejected once more. Brenda's excuse was, "Sorry, you were too slow. My friends already submitted their leave." Sure enough, the very next day, their names magically appeared on the calendar for that period. In May, I tried for the 3rd time, checking the Christmas leave calendar, finding it empty, and putting in my request. Same result. This was particularly frustrating because I have a family and I really wanted to take them on a proper holiday. I hadn't taken any leave in 2 years. I escalated the issue to the cluster manager, but she was also part of the clique and told me there was nothing she could do. Fast forward to January of the following year. Brenda and her clique were, as usual, on holiday. Coincidentally, a nasty gastro outbreak swept through our facilities, leaving us critically short-staffed. The situation was so severe that all available personnel, including the CEO himself, were on the floor covering shifts. Funding bodies had strict rules: 1 staff member for every 2 clients during the day, and we were struggling to meet that. It was an extreme situation that could have gotten our funding withdrawn. All staff not on leave were working in the houses, with qualified support workers taking the lead. During one of these shifts, I was rostered on with the CEO. He was a qualified social worker but didn't have direct support worker experience. In a quiet moment, he turned to me and said, "You've got a fair bit of leave accumulated. You should probably take some." I replied, "I know. I put in 3 separate requests last year, and all of them were rejected because I was told others had already applied for those dates." The CEO looked surprised. "Let's lock in your leave right now," he said. "Okay," I said. "How about 4 weeks over Christmas?" I filled out the form then and there, and the CEO signed it himself. He personally filled out the leave calendar and placed my application in Brenda's pigeonhole for her return. That night, I was on a sleepover shift. Knowing Brenda, I took my approved application, made a photocopy for my own records, and then carefully placed the original back under the mountain of paperwork in her pigeonhole, certain she wouldn't see it for months. This reveals my greatest strength, my patience. I understood that a premature confrontation would only result in my word against hers. I had the ultimate trump card, and I was willing to wait for the perfect moment to play it. In March, just as I suspected, I checked the leave calendar and saw that my Christmas leave had been erased, replaced with the names of Brenda and her 3 friends. I didn't say a word. I had my copy, signed by the CEO. Time passed. In October, the original house supervisor sadly passed away, and the cluster manager made Brenda the permanent supervisor, pending a 3-month probation. December finally arrived. On the first week of my approved leave, my phone rang. It was Brenda. "Where are you?" she demanded. "I'm on leave," I said calmly. "I didn't approve any leave," she snapped. "Get your ass to work now." I went in. Brenda chewed me out, insisting she never received an application form. She then added, "Even if you had submitted it, I would have rejected it. You should know by now that we always take 2 weeks in December and January." She officially wrote me up for insubordination. I worked the shift, but as soon as Brenda left, I emailed the CEO, explaining everything that had happened. He called a meeting with Brenda and me. "What happened?" the CEO asked as soon as we were in his office. Brenda cut me off before I could speak. "He took it upon himself to approve his own leave," she said, full of confidence. "I wrote him up for skipping work." "Actually," I interjected, "I submitted my leave back in January, while you were away." "No, you didn't," she sneered. "Yes, he did," the CEO stated flatly. "I approved it myself and I personally added it to the leave calendar." Brenda's face went pale. "Oh, we already had 4 staff booked on leave," she stammered. "Show me their leave forms," the CEO demanded. I destroyed them," she mumbled. Brenda made a critical error, driven by arrogance. In her haste to assert her petty dominance, she had shredded my request without looking past the date, completely unaware that this single piece of paper held not just my name, but the CEO's signature, and the key to her own downfall. I calmly reached into my bag, pulled out my copy of the leave form, and handed it to her. The CEO's signature was right there, clear as day. The silence was deafening. The CEO looked at Brenda with stone-cold disappointment. "He is on leave. I am going to sun up right now, and I am investigating this entire situation. My apologies," he said, turning to me. "Go home. I'm extending your leave by an extra week." I went home. I later found out the extra week was because the incident and meeting took up a couple days of my vacation, and he wanted to ensure I got my full 4 weeks off. When I came back to work 4.5 weeks later, I learned that Brenda had lost her promotion and was on thin ice. The CEO's investigation found she had been routinely rejecting leave requests and had deliberately deleted my approved leave from the calendar. He told her that her actions bordered on fraud. I saw a comment online once that perfectly captured the situation. "She committed fraud." They all did. They were all knowingly part of this fraudulent scheme and must suffer some consequences. The CEO didn't stop there. He completely dismantled the clique, transferring them to different houses. He also changed the leave policy, requiring his signature in addition to the supervisors and cluster managers on all requests to ensure all staff had fair access to prime leave dates. You hear so many stories about bad management, but this was a good CEO. He didn't just punish the offender, he fixed the broken system that allowed her to thrive. 2 weeks later, Brenda was fired for failing her audit requirements. In the end, this ordeal taught me that meticulous records and a little patience are the best weapons against workplace corruption. Integrity, backed by proof, will always find a way to win. Have you ever had to deal with a boss who played favorites? And how did you handle it?